Okay, she kind of said it all, so we can just get back to what we were doing a minute ago. No, thank you, David and Stephanie, for hosting this wonderful event. This is a soft launch of our friends and neighbors and extended Alameda community, so we decided to just keep it a little low-key today, no press. Hopefully that's soon to come, but thank you all for coming and really being the grassroots starting point for this campaign. And thank you so much to my husband and my family for the patience in all I'm doing right now with my job, and more than you need to know, and I'll probably always tell you more than you need to know, but hey, that's how we stay informed. I close my fiscal year at Oracle May 31st, so these 2 weeks are the craziest weeks of every year of my life, just about, so thanks to my family. And I have a few notes. I do so much better off the cusp, but because it's my first time formally speaking in front of all of you, I made some notes, so forgive me if I'm looking down, or maybe I'll go off notes. But let's see. As you can probably see from these cards and banner, I'm really trying to bring a fresh perspective to Alameda and to the current city council, and really supporting these two diametrically opposed ideas of progress and preservation, right? So that's how I'm trying to look at things. Stephanie shared with you, I didn't grow up in Alameda, but my mom has taught here. Well, she retired a few years ago. She taught here for 30 years, so kindergarten through 4th grade. I drove down Fruitvale Avenue from the Oakland Hills, and I went to Mastic before it was a senior center, and she knew all the teachers, so there was a great program at Mastic, and then I went to Otis for a couple of years, because there was a fantastic 1-2 combo, and then back to Mastic for 3rd and 4th, so, you know, I've been around. Took the bus. Anyone take the bus in Alameda for 15 cents cross town to go to ballet lessons back in the day? You know, at the Franklin Pool, I got my greens and my reds, and if you remember when we got our greens and our reds, we didn't wear shirts, right? The girls didn't wear shirts, but that's what Alameda did, right? That's the community we were. I swam with the alligators at a young age. Yeah, I wouldn't let my girls do that today, but you know, that was what they did. I swam with alligators, I did Girl Scouts, so Alameda has been really close to me. And then I went back to school in Oakland in 5th grade, but of course, my mom and her activism as a teacher kept me really close to all that was going on. And both my parents have been very politically active my entire life. They've been involved in international politics, third world politics, nationally, locally. They're teachers' unions, both of them. My father taught in the Hayward Unified School District for years, so all of our family vacations were in Hawaii for the national conference, you know. That's what we did. And Disneyland incorporated a conference at LAX Airport Hotel. So I've grown up with two really big activists, and probably a little bit of silent rebellion that I always decided I'm going to go the corporate way, right? I'm avoiding all that, but you know, by osmosis mostly, and maybe a little diffusion, but mostly osmosis. I think the ideals that my parents raised to always be serving your community and looking for what's right in the world sort of has always been instilled upon me. So you might see me and with my kids in my everyday job, but if you go home to our family, it's always, you know, like, who's thinking what about what issue and what politics are important and what revolution is happening in the world. So politics, doing the right thing, has always been really close to me. So when I moved to Alameda and I saw the work that my mother and her late husband, Arthur Lippo, who just passed away in January, had done in Alameda in their retirement, they finally both really started just focusing locally. They sort of maybe gave up some of the larger global fights, although always very well informed. I saw that the impact that they made on the city of Alameda and how there was some crazy ideas going on at city council and with the city, and they did some amazing advocacy and petitioned, you know, for two different big issues in Alameda. Both, they got enough petitions to send them to the ballot, to send their issues to the ballot, and both of them were shot, you know, they got what they wanted with about 80-20, you know, so you think, okay, the people, 80% of the people actually voted for what these groups were fighting for, which means the people do care, and if you do advocate and get these folks out to really drive change, it can happen. So I am a legacy of that, although please know I am myself. I am not my mother or my father or their politics. I am running on my own platform based on, you know, all that I can bring. And I think some of the training I've learned in the corporate world, in technology, I think will help a lot. Because what I do is I have just a few customers that I work with very closely to understand their inefficiencies, and I figure out how we can position new technology in to drive growth and efficiencies in what they're doing. And I don't sell widgets, so I have to put together unique contracts for every customer based on a whole set of business needs, both on my company side and theirs. So every deal I do really takes into consideration the needs of both sides, and I think that's what I can bring to Alameda, is a new way of looking at things, that we don't have to do things based on what's happening today and what we're told can happen, but bringing a fresh approach to how we can do things, how we can be creative and advance the city in the best interest of progress and preservation. So I'll kind of touch on some of the issues, but I wasn't going to go too deep, but ask me whatever you want. But you know, Alameda has a lot of hot issues right now, and you know, we've got a housing issue right now, we've got the whole rent control thing, we have a need for low-income housing, we have state-mandated growth numbers that we have to take by 2023. And we have development issues, right? Because with all that growth comes development in this city. So there's certain ways that I think the council and the city are looking at addressing that growth, and I don't necessarily think that they're bringing the right approach to it. And they've got years of history, and they know what they're talking about, but I think there's just unique ways that we can look at some of the ways we have to increase our housing numbers due to state mandates, which means more development. But I think that we can not take growth based on the current metric by which we are. So for those of you who know how we have to take growth, we have to take about 1,748 new homes by 2023. And that's all divided into market rate housing, low income housing, and a couple categories in between. So of course, developers come in and say, give me all that market rate housing, I want to develop, and that's where the money is. And they've sucked all that up. So if you know it or not, there are 1,500 new homes coming into Alameda right now. But what's left is a number of low-income homes right now that someone will tell you, well, we have to keep developing because we have a few hundred low-income houses that need to be developed. And what that means to a lot of developers is, well, in order to get low-income developed, we need market rate housing. So the current numbers that the city's been looking at is if you're developing in Alameda, with the exception of the Point, 15% of your development has to be low income. And if you're developing on the Point, 25% does. So with these, it's about 500-ish left in the low income bucket that have to be built. If we follow the current algebraic equation that we're looking at, we're gonna have 4,000 new houses just to hit the 500 low income. And that's where I think ideas like mine and ours can make a difference. There are ways to build those houses that we have to do, but not just say 4,000 right away. And that it's all different kinds of ideas that I have. And I can answer some of them, or I can just kind of move on to sort of some of the next points. But I think the point is also what has really brought a lot of new challenges to the city and what we're going to do with the transition. Because, you know, I moved here and we bought our house in 2009, and it's so different now, only 7 years later. And a lot of that is largely due to the transition of the Point and how we developed that. But we need jobs in Alameda, so I think some exciting tech jobs and attracting some tech companies in Alameda would be fantastic, some real jobs to promote. I think that we need housing for our essential workforce, and there's all kinds of, if anyone's heard workforce housing, it's our essential workforce who really the city needs, the teachers, the nurses, public safety. I think all those folks can't afford to live in Alameda right now, and we've also got these traffic issues. So bring some of these essential workforce people onto the island, maybe consider some of this market rate development for that workforce, because that workforce still does qualify for market rate. So developers will develop that kind of housing. Bring those folks in, have them more invested in our community, and guess what? They're not driving over the bridges, right? And it's baby steps to get those commute numbers down, right? So there are ideas out there. We don't have to just look at that algebraic equation of, 15% of that number. So let me see, what else did I want to touch on? There's the budget, right? Alameda's budget. And as we know, this is a hot button for many of us, and Alameda's budget is heavily weighted towards public safety. And that seems to be one of the most controversial issues in the city today. And I think if you look at other cities, and I've had conversations with those in other cities, public safety generally takes up the big bulk of any budget. But Alameda seems to be on the high end of what's normal. And I think what we're doing with these development numbers we have to take is this knee-jerk reaction right away that we have to develop more housing to compensate for this budget inadequacy that we have today. And I think, okay, maybe if we can just find a way to work those public safety numbers into the normal side of normal instead of the high side of normal, we'd be freeing up more dollars for the things that make Alameda so important to us. Because Alameda is fantastic, right? I mean, the pools that we grew up in, right? The pools and parks and the tidelands, the beaches. I think that makes Alameda so special. And if we can really make sure that every year when we're balancing a budget that we're looking at the preservation of what we see today in Alameda and the beautiful architecture we have and really find a way to make that happen. And as I go back to the development, we have to develop, we have numbers, but there are also ways of developing in Alameda in the greater interest of everybody. We don't have to build cookie cutter shopping complexes. I support Target, I need it, I appreciate that we don't have to go through the tunnel for one of those, for Target, but we don't need the whole city to continue to be built out like that. We have to preserve some of the architecture of Alameda and avoid the cookie cutting of Alameda. And developers that do want to come to Alameda, we want them to be vested in the city. We don't want to come in, grab development and leave, right? Make them throw down money for the schools, or make them Alameda or locally based development companies so that we're all in this together. So that's kind of part of the progress and the preservation that I'm looking for. And I think, if we keep our eyes on some of these key issues, we will all end up preserving what is Alameda today. And the traffic will stay at bay, and we can move forward as we've all known so wonderfully. So I have other things to say, but some of them may end by the wayside. But that's sort of my messaging for today, and hopefully it wasn't all over the board. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to ask, or I'll just be here for another hour or so. And thank you all for coming. This is so special that you would come out today. What's even more special that you're supporting me is that you all care about Alameda, right? Because it is such a wonderful city. So thank you for your interest in our wonderful community, and thanks for coming and being our friends and community, and thank you again to the staff.